One of Frank Capra's best movies, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Jefferson Smith, remember, appointed to the U.S. Senate, mainly because those in power said this guy's naive, we can manipulate him pretty easily. Eventually, he turns the table on him. The movie caused quite a stir, right? Remember, it was released in 1939, but even the most crooked elected officials back then would blush and be amazed at how politicians in D.C. have learned how to profit and line their pockets. It's just an art that they perfected. Meanwhile, fraud, waste, and abuse continues to amount with the largest tranche in the Treasury Department of all places. Improper payments, by the way, last year, you may have read, every year they're huge. But last year, in 2023, $230 billion. And the American public is lucky, as we have our own version of Jefferson Smith. But he's not so naive, and he is asking all the right questions.
Right. Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it.
Joining me now, Outnumbered co-host Emily Compagno, along with host of Parked on Fox Nation, Abby Hornacek.
I think that's what people are realizing for the longest time. They're looking at the discrepancy between what these public servants are making in their salary versus what their net worth is. And I think that's what's really refreshing to the American people about this current administration, is we're seeing a level of transparency that we frankly didn't really have over the last 4 years. And they're really lifting the veil. You see Elon Musk in there in the Oval Office in a T-shirt and a baseball cap, by the way. So it's becoming more relatable to people, and they're saying these politicians should not be making all of this money. Where's that coming from?
Emily?
Yeah. Look, as a federal attorney in the Social Security Administration, I couldn't accept a gift valued over $24, right? You had to record, you had to send it back. No, I can't accept that Christmas bottle of wine. And yet that's the same agency that has $8 billion per year in improper payments. And so when you hear about these guys whose salaries our tax dollars are paying, we know that they're getting enriched at our expense. But at this point, why is there the dedication to opacity? Why have we had, up until this point, the Democrats' outrage not at what is being uncovered, but at the daring to audit, the daring to ask, hey, why are there so many improper payments? Why are your pockets lined so deeply? Why, Nancy Pelosi, is the fund that tracks what you invest in does better by 20% than the market does?
Or why she can come out of a committee meeting knowing how the money's going to be spent and buy the stock maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the news hits. Her last one, TME, was amazing. I think it went up 50% after people found out she was in it. And so it's interesting. We talked about Joe Biden when he was president snubbing the Supreme Court on student loans. This was, to me, always a gimmick. And what we've just learned is that, folks, that these student loans forgiveness and increased indebtedness, decreased borrowers' monthly earnings, and employment. In other words, it completely backfired, Abby. Anyone who accepted this ended up in a worse financial position.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we saw back in March of 2021, when the U.S. government was ordered to cancel $132 billion in debt, we all said, well, what are the repercussions going to be? And now we're seeing that. Increase in mortgage, increase in auto, increase in credit card debt, 9 cents for every dollar, by the way. So we're just seeing happen now what I think a lot of people were fearful were going to happen.
I think there's some X's and O's in there economically, which obviously you know more than me, which is that if a cost is forgiven, it's absorbed elsewhere on the supply chain, to your point. But the reality is, I think what we're seeing here is that when you don't have that foundational aspect of earning, of repaying, of building those building blocks, then people get into higher credit card debt. Then people don't know how to manage their money. And those are some life skills that have been compounded onto the horrible economics the Biden administration created.
And I'm going to take it a step further. Yeah. I'm saying that they've done it on purpose, that there's this thing called propensity to consume. And the lower the income strata you are, the more that you are likely to do that. And the government knows this. So whenever they want to hike GDP, not only will they give you $1,000, but they know once you get it, you'll go to the mall and spend $1,500. At the $500 would be to your detriment. They did this on purpose. So you could argue, hey, you know what? We did great. And by the way, who really benefits from it? Ultimately, all this money goes to the top 1%, also known as political donors. All right, I've got to ask you, I want to share with you guys, I don't know if you guys watch Squid Games at all. I saw a few episodes, it's really kind of grossed me out, but apparently in Amsterdam, they're one-upping it, right? There's a thing called the Fear Clinic, and it's a real deal, and what they do is they put you in a room with your fears. Like, so let's say someone is terrified by balloons. They put them in a room with balloons. I mean, Abby, what do you think? Because I know you're doing some things recently that also you've had to confront your fears.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of balloons, thank God. Oh my gosh. But yeah, for parks this most recent season, I went bungee jumping about 10 years ago with my brother. And the weird thing is I wasn't afraid of bungee jumping before I did it. After I did it, I said, I really didn't like that. I don't want to do it again. Fast forward to this season of parks, we went bungee jumping off of this place called Bridge to Nowhere. And I said, I don't really want to do it. They somehow convinced me to do it 3 times. Now I've been bungee jumping a total of 4 times, still will never do it, and I'm confused by this because apparently in Amsterdam, they said this is 90% effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go bungee jumping again. I was not cured.
Yeah.
No, not cured.
Now, anybody over 200 is going to say they don't want to bungee jump, at least if they're in their right minds.
Yeah, bungee jump, I'm like you. I like to do a lot of stuff. Bungee jumping is where I draw the line.
Hurts your neck.
Skydiving, yes, no thank you. Bungee jumping. What I cannot do is spiders. I will not do it for any amount of money. No show. You heard it here first.
But that's a rational phobia. I really think that's a rational phobia. The balloons, maybe not so much. I want to come to your wheelhouse because all kinds of headlines on the legal front. And I think one of the ones that stands out to me is Lawfare. Because Lawfare, I think, is something that should never happen again in this country on a level that it happened against Trump. And not just Trump. Mayor Adams saying now his bribery case is over. And many said that was only brought because he rubbed the White House the wrong way.
And what's fascinating is that in the pleading of in the petition issued by the Department of Justice, it essentially said, look, this is interfering with him being able to orchestrate in his official capacity dealing with the illegal immigration crisis here. Critics argued at that every New Yorker deserves for the mayor to be prosecuted for corruption. No, every New Yorker deserves to be safe on the street and have their tax dollars stewarded appropriately, not to be invested in a bunch of illegal immigrants and resources skewered. Right. So the irony here is that Lawfare at its absolute worst, it was not limited to Donald Trump, but now hopefully he'll be freed in order to tackle this issue. And some argue he may be hinting Republican, which gives us a win in the seat.
Real quick, you used the word invest. Goldman Sachs is scrapping the diversity mandate for IPOs, Abby. So in other words, before they wouldn't take your company public if you didn't have 2 folks on the board that met this sort of criteria. Listen, it's whether it's well-meaning or not, it's always going to backfire, right? You want the best people, and it's a Band-Aid. It ultimately, just a handful of people end up on a bunch of boards.
Yeah, I do wonder with all of the DEI things that are happening is if some of these companies actually are a bit relieved that they don't have to follow the former policies because they are seeing an increase in efficiency and they can kind of just hire whoever they want. Yeah. But by the way, just on the last topic, my renewed fear is now having to give a legal analysis after Emily Compagno.
By the way,
I just developed a new fear.
By the way, that's everyone's fear.
She's so good at her job.
Emily, Abby, thank you both very, very much. All right, folks. By the way, watch a special edition of Parked with Abby Hornacek. It's right now on Fox Nation.